for legal services. This amendment will allow for all interested, otherwise qualified attorneys and/or law firms to respond to the request for proposals. The city will not make a final selection for legal services until the effective date of this charter amendment.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Hold on
Oh.
real quick. This is to do for outside, for legal counsel to be outside the city of Hagerstown, correct?
Yeah, the charter was very specific in that the law office had to be located within the city.
Right.
So it will remove that language.
Doesn't mean that if we select a firm outside the city that they don't actually move in and open in the city. Is that it?
No, I just want to clarify that, it's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1. All right, move out of special session in the work session. Joey? Review a federal JAG grant application. I think this is a no-brainer.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
This is a JAG grant that we apply for every year. Covers overtime for special involved kind of assignments and things we do. It affects any part of the city, so we're not limited to where we go in terms of running those assignments to combat criminal activity.
Scott, why don't you come here more often with these things? Thank you.
Well, my chief is in jury duty today, so that's why I'm here, so.
Good for you.
There's no way you got selected, right?
He did not, no.
So he's taking a day off paid. I understand. All right.
Thank you.
Everybody okay with this?
See you, Captain. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Joey. We're going to skip the policy on dog parks for this evening. We'll reschedule that. Going to move on to the urban improvement project, pedestrian bridge, Rodney Tissue, city engineer, et al.
Are we skipping it just to skip
Yeah.
it, or?
Skip it after now.
Just to save time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll revisit what, next week?
We'll try to add the agenda
yeah.
next week, as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have behind me a whole team of folks that are putting a lot of time and energy into making really a project of a generation happen. I think everybody knows what the urban improvement project is about, the expansion of the Barbara Ingram School, the expansion of the Maryland Theater, the expansion of the University System of Maryland, all those entities coming together, state, city, county entities all working together to try to make this happen. As we continue to work through the process here, and as we are, one of the bigger issues that we are always facing is the funding of everything, and we continue to seek grants and opportunities to fund the various portions of the project. As we were working through the issue of the funding for the Barbara Ingram School, the discussion of the bridge that would connect the Barbara Ingram School to the university system arose. And I'll just show you here on this map so everybody knows what we're talking about. This is a slide that actually I took from the Board of Education's presentation that they're giving, but the the Maryland Theater, the new Barbara Ingram School, the existing Barbara Ingram School, the University of Maryland's over here, the expansion into the buildings over here on the south side of West Washington Street. The proposed bridge would connect the new Barbara Ingram School and would cross the alley, cross over the county's current property, and tie into the building that currently often is called the Bede Building. It's a taller four-story building. It's a distance of 150 feet from here to there. This is the second floor plan of the new Barbara Ingram School. As you can see, the corridor goes through the building, the alley's back here. The bridge would exit off of that and then continue over to the university.
And that's gonna cross over the plaza.
Cross over the edge of the plaza, correct? The plaza, as it's currently being contemplated, is, stand where everybody can see, this area here, bounded by the alley or street that comes in here now. It's all the parking and area back in here behind the those buildings. So the question at hand tonight is the construction of the bridge. We've been asked if we could construct the bridge as part of the plaza project, assuming that the city was going to build the plaza, that the bridge could be built as a phase of that. The city would own the bridge, but the county and the Board of Education would maintain it. We've also been asked, as I said, to construct the bridge as the first phase of the plaza. Other folks here with me tonight can go over any other details of that. If we would move forward with something like that, we would obviously need to have an MOU or an agreement that would outline, all the details of that. But for tonight, we're just asking if this body is willing to take that on as a project where we would own and construct the bridge.
What happens at the end of the life cycle of the bridge?
Well, it would have to be spelled out in the agreement. I would think that it would go with it would have to be removed by one of the building owners. I don't know, we'd have to work that out. I don't know that I have a straight answer for you on that.
I mean, the county and the Board of Ed are maintaining it, maintenance goes for X number of years. But obviously at some point,
It's end of its useful life.
yeah, and it'd have to be,
Somebody has to remove it.
yeah, or reconstruct it.
Right.
Seems you couldn't maintain it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think we get an answer, but what's the $64,000 answer? How much money?
To rebuild it.
To do what is being requested.
We're not, we won't have
We're not
any
putting
money.
any money in.
We're not paying for it.
No funding at all.
All
If
we're
somebody else
doing
gonna
is
pay
owning
to
it
build it,
And building it.
right. We're owning it and building it, somebody
Money's
else gonna
coming
pay
from someplace else.
to build
To
it,
build,
and then they're gonna pay to maintain.
pay the
it.
cost to maintain.
Is there a reason we wouldn't do this?
Right, that's what I'm asking.
I can't come
Well,
up.
that's my question, though, is what happens at the end of the life cycle of the structure?
I think that that's a very good question.
Yeah, it is.
And the
County or
bullet points in the
state?
memo kind of outlined some of the concerns staff had. If we move forward with this, then we would just need to make sure that in the agreement, we have some of those items worked out. So that agreement, that would have to come back to this body for approval.
I may be
Formally.
very wrong about this, and I may be, but I would think if this thing is properly built and properly maintained,
There'd be no end life.
there would be no end.
Right.
I mean, I go down to, down in Rockville, the theater down there that has the walkway, I walk on that, I think that has the same life as the parking garage. I mean, it's all concrete, steel, and glass, I don't know.
And it's still to be determined exactly what it's going to look like. On Monday, the architect, Scott Bowen, is actually providing us some concepts of what it could look like. But at least will it be conditioned? Will it have sprinkling and all that? That's kind of like another level. Those decisions still have to be made. But at this point, all I can tell you is it's going to be basically enclosed and it's going to be elevated and
But
connect the two
there
buildings.
won't be other public access. That council should understand that as well.
I think the intent of it is the security of the students.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't do it. We okay?
Is there anything I should add? Am I missing
When you
anything?
work all the things out on the
Yeah,
memorandum of
Right,
understanding?
and that'll come back to you for consideration.
I can give you more detail.
Well, come on up, Rob.
Come on.
Don't be afraid.
Hi, Rod, how are you? Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Our Board of County Commissioners met on this morning and had agreed to the funding mechanisms in which the county will see that the funding is there when necessary to be built with the other portions of the project. I know the delegation, Senator Serafini's here, and Hager 5 are also contributing to this largely, as well as other portions of the state. So that portion is covered. The Board of Ed in the MOU is covering the interior maintenance of the bridge. And today it was agreed and voted on unanimously by the Board of County Commissioners that were there that the exterior maintenance would be fully covered by the county. So it's really a joint effort with your participation of three parties here.
I was just commenting to the senator what a pleasure it is to see for the first time in my memory history of all these government agencies working together, let alone working together and not fighting with each other.
Right.
And the fact that Rob is here and the senator's here and our private partners are here is just something that everybody should be proud of. I think it's a fantastic idea.
So we're good? All right, sounds good. Thank you. Andy?
Just one point of clarification, and I appreciate your sentiments, and that's very good. We are also still, though, in this process talking to USM as well. So it's possible that in the process they may say, gee, there's reasons for us. We just need somebody to own it. We're going to make sure it's paid for. We've got it maintained.
No
There's reasons for you guys. If there's reasons for USM instead, we'll come back to you at that point. But we appreciated your guys' willingness to do that. You know, as far as the construction of the plaza, that's something we want to work with you. Great visit with Secretary Holt the other day, by the way. You guys did a fabulous job with that. And you know what he's trying to do for our community, not just for this project, but in all, is really something. And he's excited about what he can do in Hagerstown that he said he can't do in other parts of the state. So, you know, it's not just the UIP at this point. There's a lot of other great things, and I think the city should be proud of the presentation you all made to him the other day, and that we're excited for what that can mean too. So I just wanted to tell you, we're talking to USM as well because they're a major player in this. If for some reason it makes more sense to them, we'll see. Because right now the Board of Ed students are going to them. But at some point, we're hoping as their programs expand, they might be using those classrooms in the evening too. So that's why they're a big partner in this. So we are thankful for you guys' willingness, and we certainly will work with Rod and you guys as you go forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I would just want to reiterate the comments that I've made in prior discussions, and your drawing, I think, your depicts exactly the point that I've made. You know, and I have to remind folks, you know, the A&E deck was built before the A&E was truly up and running, and I will reiterate here that if we get all of this stuff up and running and we're not ready for the construction of a third parking deck, we are going to be behind the eight ball, and I completely continue to support that idea as a necessity, not as something that we simply would be nice to have.
Thank you, Rob. All right, next up, Urban Improvement Project, Maryland Historic Trust Memorandum of Agreement for Property Demolitions.
Good afternoon. Following up on Rodney's urban improvement project conversation, another urban improvement project item that has come up here quickly. We, in the spring, applied for state community legacy funding and state strategic demolition funding for the urban improvement project. There's a mix of applications in there, all to be funding the Maryland Theater portion of the project, the Board of Education portion of the project, and also the Plaza portion of the project. In anticipation of that funding, we've been proactive in working with the Maryland Historical Trust, as the Maryland Historical Trust stipulations will be triggered to use state funding for such projects, especially involving demolition of properties, contributing properties in a historic district. So with that said, what typically happens is there has to be a memorandum of agreement that displays or outlines what steps will be taken to mitigate the loss of historic properties in a historic district. We would be part of the agreement because we are the funding entity, or the entity where the funding will come to the city, and then we would pass it on to the project developers. There's really not much to the agreement that locks the city in other than to assist with planning and coordination of some mitigation of the loss of historic properties, which for that, for the projects in question, that would be interpretive plaques or interpretive photographs or some type of interpretive items for the buildings that are being lost through the demolition of the project. It doesn't look like there's any monetary commitment on the city's part. The memorandum of agreement spells out the monetary commitment would be from the developers themselves, either the Maryland Theater or Bowman Development, in the demolition of the two buildings in question. So what we're looking for is approval to enter into these agreements. We would come back during regular session, and we would have to sign those formally to then move forward.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. All right, next up, verbal update on the Picker Committee, permits, inspections, and code compliance review.
My name's Wes Churchy. I'm the chairman of the board. The PICC are on the committee. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so please excuse if I don't speak well or don't do it quite right. You can correct me. It will probably be a little unconventional, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And first of all, I'll say to Mr. Councilman Metzger and the mayor, I think you know me best of all. 16 years ago, we were quite through speaking hell, I guess, quite madly. But not only did you two and other council members at the time stick by me, and I think I showed that I stuck with the city also. You know, it would have been really easy to sell off the project in 2007, or it would have been really easy to walk away in 2008 or 2009 and still be able to hold my head high after the housing crisis that we went through. So this city means a lot to me, and I'm very proud of it. We spent 8 meetings, and I don't think we really got that far. And something happened a week and a half ago. City staff wrote a memorandum that I thought I was responsible for writing, and I was not happy about it. I replied with my own, and I did reply with a whole lot of frustration. A lot of people spent a lot of time in this committee, and staff spent a lot of time. The non-staff members spent a lot of time. So it was called by some people cruel. One person even said it was hated. It was hate. I'm a contractor. I know many different words, and hate isn't one of them. I don't believe in hate. So that really resonated with me. So I agreed that we would not submit a memorandum. And I've talked to a lot of people about it. In fact, as of this morning, I called a friend of mine, and he looked at me, and he says, I want you to present it. He said, Rome wasn't built in a day. And he said, if you don't speak up, somebody else won't speak up. But because it was called hate and all like that, I'm not presenting it. It won't go no further than my briefcase as it stands right now. What some people liked of it, in fact, a lot of people liked it. But the one thing I did not hear from anybody was that it was wrong. There is a lot of frustration between the private sector and the permits and codes departments, not only with permits and codes, but inspectors and waters and sewers. Everybody has a form of it. I think it came out in our memorandum, or my memorandum, and we had one of the best meetings that we ever had in the last 8 last Friday. I think we accomplished more in that meeting than we accomplished in the 7 before. I think it did make a point that people are frustrated. So with your all's permission, we talked about contacting legal counsel to get some questions answered. And we are going to come back here next October, or not, excuse me, after our October meeting, which I think is October 13th at the next one. And we're going to present to you a whole bunch of changes we'd like to see. And one of the big things you're going to see in that changes, staff isn't going to agree with all of them. We're not going to agree with all of them. But you will hear every side of the story, because I think so many bills and things are passed only hearing one side. So that's our plans to do. We have some legal questions, and I think it has been approved that we can go to legal counsel and ask these questions and get a consensus on them questions of some of the changes we'd like to meet. And the bottom line is it's your decision. I don't think it's staff's or it's the non-staff's or anything. It will be your decision, but you will have it laid out in front of you with a memorandum, and I will make sure that it's not mean or hateful, because it's not me, but I was extremely frustrated that it was, I think, 7 meetings was so demeaned.
Well, Wes, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
To date, because I know I've sat in a couple of those meetings.
That's correct.
And to date, there have been some changes.
We have
that
made
have-
some quite, some
Can we
minor
cover
changes.
some of
Sure.
those?
The first one was, the very first one was the permission slip, is as I call it. The permission slip, so homeowners can give a contractor, a permit runner, or anybody to take out. It used to have to be signed by the person that the permit is being taken out for. Now they can email it in, and that's a great help. I mean, somebody e-signing something is easy for the homeowner. They're paying somebody to do a job, so it is great that we can do this e-signing. We also took that one step further. Help me out here, Kathy, with the e-signing, that if it's a permit runner, he can also have the permission slip that he can sign everything also.
In the past, if it wasn't the person submitting the permit, wasn't the person who signed the permit, we didn't accept it. And that seemed overly bureaucratic. So now we've created a new form for whoever the runner is that comes by. So you've got the form signed by Joe homeowner or Joe developer. They send in Bob the runner. Bob the runner can fill the form out saying, I'm on.
Why is it gotta be Bob the runner, Kathy? That's what I'm.
Okay, Bill the runner. Robbie the runner. So just to cut down on some of the red tape.
And then we also have gotten the billing. If I go apply for a permit, or anybody, they put their $100 down if it's a substantial permit, and then the rest of the fees are added afterwards, and that goes for the water and sewer also. The tap fee and the benefit charge, thank you.
Yeah, waiting until when the meter's set.
And actually, they took it a step further. We asked for at least when we paid the final payment on the permit, and Mike Spiker took it one step further and said, until you set the meter, which is great. I mean, everybody's budget is extremely tight these days. It even goes for us. Our profit margins are way down, so we watch every penny. And so there has been some small, minor changes. There's been a lot of discussion on how to move the permit faster. We might need some of your help with that, changing some rules and some regulations. I'm hoping, and I feel confident, that then we're going to do a lot more emailing, having maybe some things worked out before the next meeting. And like I said, legal counsel is going to help, I think, tremendously. And we're going to bring you a proposal or a list of things you should act on. And like I said, I think, I promise it will be from both sides.
Well, the good thing is that, legal can maybe offer some answers to some of those questions that I heard the other day, about, if one jurisdiction do it this way, why can't another jurisdiction do it the same way? Why, and we can get some legal information about those kind of changes.
Right,
So,
and I think that's the biggest question with legal is why, we can pull out different, counties fairly close, and, they have it right there in writing. One person said it's black and gray also, so it is. There's nothing, we went over, and I think you were there that time. We went over something, and just the word should means a lot, especially to an attorney. But, and that's it, and I think a lot of it we can, I think we can make changes. And I think because there is this, I think everybody's at agreement that it has hurt the city. You got some great projects. I mean, this is unbelievable. And somebody said Monday, it's $30 million worth of work gonna happen in the city of Hagerstown. This is unbelievable. And, maybe we can get some of these people to spend $5 million more. But where we are lacking, and I think this is where this really comes into play, is all the $100,000 jobs, all the storefronts. And they're not down there now. And that's what we have to fix. We got this, we got to turn up in the economy. I think we need to jump on the bandwagon and get some small shops, figure out how to get them there, figure out how to do what other communities are doing. And we got 3 more months to do it, and I think we can make a lot of way. I hate to say, I think the first 7 months was maybe rough, but I think we got woke up, and I hope we're on the right track now.
There's a lot of conversation that had to happen.
I think so.
Yes, it did. Any questions for Wes or Kathy while they're at the table?
Why is it that every time I see you, I think of this name Day?
I do have one question, if I may, and it was something I think the administrator brought up, that we had to ask permission, and we haven't got there yet. So it's something maybe you can think on, for our next section in October 18th or whatever day it works out to be, that we had to ask permission to even discuss the rental licensing process. So I would like an answer on that, if we could, on the October, whatever date that would be, meeting. I don't even know, I've been told that we don't need permission, and I've been told we need permission, so.
Black and
there
gray.
it is. Huh?
Black and gray.
Black and gray, that's correct. So, that's it.
The question is the direction of this body to give this group authority to discuss
To
how to
review
make
it.
the rental registration program better? Get suggestions from people who deal with it every day.
My response to that's pretty simple, and I think where it's black and gray is this. When this administration started, there were at least 2 council members who were very frustrated with everything they had heard about the permitting process. That's why they were so nicely nominated to be the 2 elected officials on this, and I say that in a positive manner for both of them in the committee. So I think what happened there is your group was set up for a very specific purpose, and it was that purpose. And so when those discussions started taking place, obviously some people went, whoa, that's not what they were set up to do. I personally have no problems with that whatsoever, but I think that I may be speaking for some other people because this hasn't been discussed among us. But I think we would like some sort of conclusion on what the committee was asked to do. And I think so some of the current concern maybe is let's get an answer to that and then move on to the next issue instead of, unless you find they are intertwined to a large degree and have to be done that way. I certainly think that any of us who decide to not listen to the very people that we're dealing with is the cause of a huge problem. So I have no problems with the committee going in that direction at all. But again, I think it's real important to understand, we would hate to find out that the committee really doesn't have any final report to give us about what they were charged with, but now want to charge into whole nother arena to discuss. And I think that may be the issue, especially with the charges of the special committee, how it was set up. So I'm only speaking for me, but I have no problems with it and invite it. We've done it before, some changes took place, but I'm fine with it.
Well, I'll just go back to the acronym of PICR. Permits, inspection, code compliance, review. I think a lot of that is intertwined. And I heard a very smart lady say this morning that we always want to hear about a better way to do something.
Yeah.
Remember when you said that to me? But anyway,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
very smart lady.
Just one final note. I want to tell Lou this and Bob, about it's either 4 or 5 of the people that was very involved in our lawsuits and all like that now live at Greenwich, by the way. So I just want to point that out.
Well,
Now, I remember so good a way.
Oh, man, it was nasty, wasn't it?
You were building a slum, weren't you?
Yeah,
Like,
the
completely-
barracks. The
Completely
barracks.
destroy the
Yes.
whole integrity.
I mean, here's the reality. When this came about, Paul and Emily brought it up. I was clearly in favor of creating this group. And I think, as Lou points out, there are clearly 3 people on this side of the table that said, yeah, we should create this entity. But for me, obviously, my interest from hearing from some of the architects and engineers associated with the various projects, the bigger projects of improvement, was the concerns with the permit process. And so, what you didn't get to see as a group was our process of constructing your group.
Right.
And when we constructed that group, we gave fairly specific marching orders to staff in the construction of that group to say, we want to make sure that these projects that are set to occur, that are on the verge of occurring, that are in process right now, are the primary purpose of this committee to identify ways to make them happen at a more efficient, timely, and cost-effective manner, so that there is resolution to the delays that we were hearing as individuals. And so that was the charge. And it had nothing to do with rental registration. It had nothing to do with the crime-free ordinance. It had nothing to do with the habitual offender stuff. It had nothing to do with those things. It had to do with, we know that within our core we have a number of projects that are in process of commencing, and we want to make sure that whatever our permit process is, it assists that in happening in whatever size project that may be, to remove any of those hurdles. And what we get to see then, as members of this body, are minutes, only the minutes of the meetings that are occurring. And so, very frankly, my responses were in respect to what I envisioned we were constructing the committee for, and in what the minutes that I was reading indicated the committee was undertaking. And clearly, in my opinion, of what I intended to be constructed for and the minutes of what I was reading were 2 clearly different things happening. And in my opinion, it was heading toward those code-oriented items. And I recognized that we only gave it that set time frame, and that time frame was given in context of recognizing that we have these projects going on, and we'd love to have those permit things resolved before UIP and before Hamilton and before Harold and those other projects sort of, are happening. And so that's, that at least gives you my perspective on, the difference of opinion.
And I agree with what you're saying as far as why it was initially formed, but I think that everyone everyone's objective is to make Hagerstown easier to do business with from all aspects. So when we start these conversations, it leads down these other rabbit holes where our initial agenda was, okay, let's fix the permitting process, but then it goes hand in hand with, well, this is still a pain, or this is still, makes it difficult for us to do business with. How can we fix it overall? Or what are there little tweaks that would make it easier overall? So I think when you're reading the minutes, it's hard to stay on topic when so many topics are intertwined. So I think everyone's objective is to make us easier to do business with. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just, so it's all kind of intertwined. It's hard to stay on one specific.
I hear you. Rental registration, though, was becoming a pervasive item within those minutes that we were being provided. And in that context, there are clearly three members of this body, as I expressed very plainly, that have no intent and have expressed so to change the dynamics significantly of that program. So,
So I'm only going to offer one more time, as we've discussed before. If there's a better way of doing exactly what three people want to keep, why would we not look at that?
because that's not the initial charge and the purpose of that charge that we set out with 7 months ago to make sure that these things were addressed before these larger projects start to happen.
And I will take the blame on that because I was frustrated with the direction that the group was going. I felt like we were spending 7 months on the same thing when we needed to make other progress. So I went back to my initial notes from our first meeting when we asked everyone, what would you like to accomplish over these next 12 months? And the areas of concern were the permitting process, making the rental registration program easier to deal with, and the mentality of us versus them. So I said, we need to move on from this topic until we can get the legal advice of, can we change everything we just said? We need to move on. So the minutes that you read in the response to the email, that was my fault, because I just felt like we needed to move on. We were talking about the same thing for week after week after week, but we didn't have the answers from the state as to whether that's something we can even propose changing. So while we're waiting on that, we needed to go on to a different topic. Something to improve the.
Plus, with the makeup of our committee, there's a natural interest in the rental licensing program and
Yes,
a way
there
to
is.
make enhancements.
And we got to keep in mind, I'm sorry, that we're talking all about the same people doing the same process. I mean, one is inspecting rentals, one is inspecting new houses, one is inspecting your commercial project. We have 3 inspectors, and only 3 licensed inspectors. So it is all the same people. It has to be intertwined somehow. And like I said, my purpose and what I thought this was about was to bring you a collective group facts. I love facts. I mean, I borrow millions of dollars, and I have to have facts. When I go to a bank and say, this is my next project, this is what I want to borrow, you know, it goes through a couple different boards, a couple presidents, you know, and it can even, depending on the money, goes on down the line. So I really love facts, and I think that was our whole problem. Me and Kathy had a talk on Monday. It's the lack of facts, you know. The state says we have to do it. Well, where is it in writing? Let's see it, you know, because as we just talked about, you know, just one word makes a difference.
Sure it does.
They are interconnected. I think if we solve one, it will help with others. I was told I had to ask the question, so that's why I was asking.
Well, I know that everyone in this building, not just at this table, wants our message to be out in communities, not just ours, but others, that we are a place to do business. And that's what the goal is. So however we get to that goal, listen, I don't care how we get there, as long as we do. So recommendations. I'll look forward to what you guys had to present in October. And if anybody doesn't have anything else, we have a remembrance
The only
at
thing I'll
City
add real
Park.
quick is I wanted to thank Mr. Churchy for his commitment to chairing this board, and thank the other members that are here this evening for being on it as well. And as Mr. Churchy and Councilwoman Keller alluded to, that we have had a lot of the same discussions over a couple of different months, and I think we're finally making some headway in a lot of the permit aspect of it. And I think pretty much we're almost at a conclusion. I think we pretty much decided our last meeting it was time. And I mean, I appreciate what you said, but I don't think there's any blame to be taken, because I think they're intertwined. It's just a natural progression of where we need to go next. Chris, I understand your concerns with what was in your mind, what was originally set up for. And I think you just alluded, though, about, I don't think anyone's discussing about having the rental registration necessarily go away or anything of that nature. But when you're talking about changes, you said we're not making changes. We just had a presentation last week, which talked about, or 2 weeks ago, of some significant changes. So as Councilman Metzner just said as well, I mean, if we're gonna gather the information, I think it's only prudent to gather the information from both sides, not only what staff has provided us, but I don't own a home, I own a home, but I don't rent a home out. I don't have, properties that I manage and don't necessarily know all the ins and outs and the frustrations. So I think it's, again, only prudent that we gather those facts and that information to make an informed decision on both sides. And as Wes indicated, there'll probably be, some things on one side and some things on the other, but I don't see how we'd not at least have that discussion. Obviously, at the end, I mean, the committee will make their recommendations, and it'll be upon this
To make a
this
decision.
group to make a
Right.
decision. So I think that's all that's being asked, is can there be a discussion about it and an input to what is directly affecting,
I just want to get there in 12 months.
Oh, yeah, no, I think we're there. I think the permit part, we're pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, again, that we're pretty much got that.
I think
We have some
we're pretty
legal
much done. We're going
questions to
to
get
some
answered,
legal
but
questions
our next
and-
agenda item, with the blessing of this body, so to speak, was to move and look at the rental registration process.
Yeah, I had suggested we look at our inspection checklist. There's a lot of frustration with that process of rental licensing, and if we set up the program to ensure everyone has a safe home, we should look at the inspection checklist. Have we gone beyond making sure everyone has a safe home?
We did this years ago. And
Yes, we did.
I still remember the complaint about failing the rental registration because there wasn't a strainer in the sink. And I remember that, and I remember those were the types of frustrations. We tried to get away from those types of things, and I don't know if we did. I don't know if we got away from them, and if we went back to them. I don't know, and I have no problems whatsoever with this type of discussion. I mean, I vividly remember that.
We have a
And-
captive audience, we might as well take advantage of their
Right.
That's
expertise.
exactly
And I mean,
right.
And I don't even have a disagreement. I don't mind the strainer having to be in the sink. But I do mind saying that you have failed because of it. I would much prefer to see, you have some time, get yourself a strainer in the sink. If that's the type of thing that's appropriate. I'm not saying it is, but no, I think if you want to send any signal in the world that we are not a place to do business with, it would be a signal to say, we don't want your input. I mean,
Right.
I don't know how much more of a signal we could send out to the public that's in this business that we're not a good place to deal business with if we tell you we don't really care what you think. And I do care what you think, and I think everybody here does. I'd like to think so.
Well, I appreciate you coming in, and I look forward to the presentation after your meeting with legal counsel. I want to say that I purposely made the executive session go longer because I knew Mike Fitzgerald would be late, so.
And thank you guys for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kathy. Thank you, guys, appreciate it. City Administrator?
No additional comments.
Luke?
I take it this was in front of me for a reason?
I have no idea what it is.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Asking for someone,
We're
it
passing
started
them
out.
around.
Oh, we're just passing it around?
I can't do that one. I took the other one.
I'm out of town that day.
And you're not.
I don't even know what it is. So, it didn't make it to me.
Otherwise, I don't have anything there. And
Okay.
if you can't do it, you let me know.
Read aloud. Come on.
Well, I'll look at it. Paul?
You didn't have anything, Lou?
No.
Just a couple things. I want to thank Councilwoman Keller for organizing the opioid vigil that we had a couple weeks ago. The mayor and I happened to be down there. Outside of that, one thing I noticed, there's some old Christmas lights hanging from the trees.
Bingo.
I don't know if we can get those down or replaced or what they are, but there's just strings on them flapping in the wind, right on the square.
Trees in the square.
You see them before, too?
You know, we had, thanks for bringing that up, but I talked one time years
I would
ago
like to do it.
about having those lights in those trees in the square.
Charlie Sikola asked us to do it.
Year
Well, no,
round.
It wasn't Charlie, it was Bulls and Bears.
Yes.
Asked us, and
Yes.
I
mean,
would do it in a near
listen,
second.
I'll start the donation. I'll donate $100 toward that project if we can make that happen. I just think
They
that
do out in Vale.
creates an
and it's
ambiance
beautiful.
down there
Yeah,
that-
it's beautiful. You get the many white lights or
Yep.
whatever, yeah.
Next, the McCleary Hill meeting. Again, 2 weeks ago, we haven't met since then, that most of us were at. There was a lot of good discussion, I think, that took place at that. I would propose that as a body, obviously, would be dependent on who would be in favor or not of, I know Kristen sent a letter himself, it was right during the change of the administration, of a letter of opposition, whether it does any good or not. I would propose that. I believe the county is in the process of doing as well, at least Commissioner Baker had said the same thing. So I'd like to put that out there as well. Lastly, on a more positive note, Emily, I hope I don't steal your thunder at all, but Aaron Brooks is a world champ. Anybody know what school he goes to?
North Eye.
That's right.
Nor am I.
I know you and I had spoke a couple weeks ago when he won the national championship about maybe getting him in. Actually, Coach Slick actually reached out to me today, inquiring on that as well. If there's anything we could do, I think, we should definitely
I
recognize
tell
the
you.
young man for his accomplishments.
We're not.
We need to do that
We do look
here
good.
and recognize
Yeah,
him,
absolutely.
but I would like to talk to Alsacia
That
and
too.
see if
I
we
was gonna-
can.
That's the next thing I was gonna say.
I mean, if they already have their grand marshal, maybe he could be a
Yeah.
co-grand marshal, but the point is
Absolutely.
that it would be a great way
Yep.
to honor his accomplishments as a world champion. So,
Yep. So, that's it. Good.
Mr. Alshire?
Just to follow up on the meeting with the, what's it called, Cedar Lawn, folks out at the Elgin station. I think some folks may have gotten the misimpression leaving there that I somehow came, in a posture of defense of Nolan Village and the Housing Authority, and I don't think that I came there in a posture of either. I think that I was fairly clear, and I wanted to reiterate these 2 points. The first is, for me, as a council member, it's largely a monetary thing. I look at the dynamics of that piece of property, and I say, what's its highest and best, economical benefit to the city? And is that it? And the answer is no. I think I was fairly clear with folks at Cedar Lawn that when I said, this is going to cost us money for a property that we annexed in under completely different intentions. At the end of the day, it will cost us money. No different than it is now because of the pilot. And because of the level of additional services. That's just a fact of life. That's what's happening. So, for the folks that were there that got some impression that I was in favor, I wasn't in favor. I was simply defending what I felt were some fairly extreme and extremely uninformed views on that neighborhood. I made the remark the next day to a friend when I was talking to him. I said, I could drive you to 6 neighborhoods in this city, in this community, in and around the city, and you couldn't tell me, largely one from the other of similar characteristics in Nolan, because I live right near there. I walk through there, and so, I just felt that there was some extremism that needed to be put right, not defended, but put right. The second is, you know, folks can stand up as politicians in a room like that, and they can, you know, and they can pound their fist and they can say, you know, public, you know, you deserve a voice in this. But here's the reality. We have public processes for a purpose. And we are that voice that represents the public when they seek to have opinions put forth on these matters. And the state and federal process was pretty clear when it said, back in October, November, when they were looking at the original location, which got you know, turned down for exactly those dynamics of the application that didn't score high enough to make it so. And again in January, when we had that period of comment. And I know that I was in this public venue, that I was reaching out through various other media to those respective county and state counterparts and saying, hey, if you want to voice a position of opposition to this application, you need to do it now because here's your window. I think I communicated that fairly effectively in each of those formats. And I just find it disingenuous that you stand in a meeting and you say, now the citizens deserve a voice. You were that voice at that moment in that process. You were that voice for them. And if you didn't exercise it, and the reality is for the folks that sat in that room and were misinformed that I was there defending the housing authority, here's the truth. I was the only publicly elected official in that room that in either of those cases wrote a formal letter of opposition to the application based on its merits. Nobody else. And they all of those elected officials had the opportunity to do so. Now to come back at the 11th hour after everything's already went through the process and been approved and say, well, now we want to hear you. Now we want to defend your concerns. Where were those people when the original application went in to double the size of Noland at its current location? They were nowhere because they didn't have a contingent of folks from Greenberry Hills saying, hey, go to bat for us and try to keep this out. And I just think that's a ridiculous political way to conduct your public service. So that's my soapbox.
Thank you.
So you're saying you're not signing?
No.
I sent mine.
He's not talking about you.
I sent mine during
He's not
the
talking about
period when they said, hey,
Because that period was
officials.
before-
Yeah, no, he's not talking about
change
you.
of,
No,
That's
the
right.
two biggest,
Mayor Geisler sent one originally himself.
And support.
But Geisler sent one on that location, the new location.
Right.
And I sent my letter of opposition based on my concerns with accountability and my concerns with financial
let there be no
capability.
misunderstanding that the two vocal opponents of this project on this body are Kristen and Paul. And there's no question, and Paul, I know that Kristen was not referring to you at all.
I didn't take it
Oh,
that way.
I was.
I was just trying to clarify where it
Yeah,
stood now.
yeah, no, there's no question that Paul and Kristen, and Kristen, I agree with you. You are a huge vocal opponent who people perceived as somebody who was supporting because you were trying to deal with facts instead of rah, you guys are right, let's, elect me. Emily?
Well, that's gonna be a tough speech to follow, but, I just
Make sure I
wanna,
put the soapbox away.
just real quick regarding the violence that happened yesterday and has been plaguing this community with gang violence and drugs. And we get people reaching out to us all the time saying, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? And I think we desperately need some men leaders in this community to step up and start mentoring these young boys, because we have a problem. We have these 16, 17, 18-year-old boys out there that are carrying guns, and we read about it in the paper every time. And yes, it is partially our responsibility. It's absolutely the police responsibility, which they are constantly getting them. But where are the men in this community stepping up to mentor these young boys? And that's what I want to know. There are some,
And Art Hicks is
absolutely.
somebody I would definitely.
But I think we don't have enough, or we don't have enough publicity around it. If there is mentorship programs happening, if there is activities happening, we need to start being notified so we can help make it more public and make sure that the public is showing up. Because I have a fear for the young kids in this community, and I think we all need to be doing more, myself included, everyone at this table, but also it's a responsibility of the community as well to step up and start doing a better job and setting a better example for these young kids that are clearly going down the wrong path. So I asked if there are mentor programs happening, that you include us so we can know and maybe help publicize it, but also start stepping up.
Good.
So.
Okay. I don't have anything additional to add this evening. We'll be at the Remembrance in the Park, 6 o'clock. So hopefully if you can make it, come join us. Thank you. See you next week.